Okay, colleagues, we're going to do 3 quick hit questions here. So one-liners or two-liners at most, right? The first one is the NFL and off-field violence. Now, my question is, why has this basically an employment issue gone to the senior guy in the league rather than being handled as any other employment issue would by the owner of the company that employs him? Cindy?
Well, my take on this is that the football players are members of a labor union and they're covered by a collective bargaining agreement. And so the adjudication process for things like this takes a different route.
John?
I think it's really falling in the bailiwick of both, that there are owners that are simply giving up these players, letting them go. But I think at the same time, the NFL commissioner is the most visible person, and obviously the owners pick the NFL commissioner, so he becomes a lightning rod, and then from there everything trickles back down to the owners.
George?
Yeah, I think it's an easy answer in that the NFL is a corporation, and its image is at stake, and they're not going to let the guy down on the shop floor make a decision that could embarrass the company, the NFL.
Well, I would wish I was on that panel because I got a different point of view. All right, thanks. Okay, number 2, the tax inversion issue. This is when a company, either through an acquisition or otherwise, changes its headquarters, and one of the effects of that is to lower its corporate income tax, right? So this idea of a company relocating headquarters to another company is often termed unpatriotic. But it's not illegal. And the question is it unethical? Is it now unethical to be unpatriotic? Or is it just bad form? George?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely unethical, and it probably raises itself to the level of being unpatriotic as well. Because although those corporations do an administrative tap dance and assign responsibility to an offshore organization as its headquarters, it still expects to be protected by the United States and everything that the United States offers, not only by the way of defense protection, but also the maintenance of this thing called free market capitalism, which allows them to survive. It's not fair to take from anything and give nothing back.
John?
I'll go down the opposite road. I think it's neither unpatriotic nor is it unethical, because they're responding to systemic incentives. If there's a disparity in the corporate tax rates worldwide, and it's very low in Ireland, and it's the highest possible here in the US at 35 to 39%, then I think we have to change the incentives. So they're simply responding to systemic issues here, and they are propelled by that.
Cindy?
Well, it's funny how the system creates opportunities for some people in society, some groups in society to prosper, but others can't take advantage of these same opportunities. Some of our citizens might like to be able to get the benefits that accrue to you from being in other countries as well, but we don't get those either. So, you know, here we have another example of how the rules differ for the well-off versus the underprivileged.
So you're joining George and you're gang up on John.
I'm joining George and ganging up on John.
Let me add another comment, right? Of the Fortune 500, and I'll safely say the top 25 firms within that Fortune 500 paid an effective tax rate of 0.
Yes.
And so consequently, you don't need to leave this country if you have the talent within your company to effectively manage your tax obligations.
True.
Let me add another thought. As a loyal American, that I will remain so, because as contrasted to Australia, I would never emigrate to that high tax region. So I'm responding to incentives as well.
Well, and ironically, responding to incentives is exactly what the VA employees did when they fudged the data.
The incentives have to be structured well.
Well, I guess we'll have to re-overhaul the entire tax system.
I think so.
Piece of cake, right? All right.
There we agree.
Thanks. Thanks. Okay, the third quick hit. I'll give you the real short version question first. Why have there been no CEOs or other senior executives sent to jail for the crimes that we all know were committed at some level or another during the financial crisis? Instead, there's been $76 billion worth of settlements among the top 5 of these banks. So why are these guys and gals not going to jail? John?
Few quick answers. First of all, the politics and the cronyism of it is preventing the Justice Department, which has currently an egregious record of trial advocacy, of taking action. Cronyism plugs in when you've got personal, cultural, political, and financial ties between Wall Street and the Department of Justice. A lot of these people say they're going to go on and do good things, but most of them turn into hitting the cash register and cashing out by going to Wall Street.
George?
Yeah, it's a good question, a long answer, but I'll try and make it brief. Citizens United and this thing called collateral consequences and too big to fail has caused the government to be willing to negotiate settlements with multi-billion-dollar corporations who have in fact violated the law. A corporation is a person, which means they can go to court. But if they settle by admitting no wrongdoing, by definition, if there were no wrongdoing, nobody gets to go to jail.
Cindy?
Well, here we go again. What gets measured gets done. What gets rewarded gets repeated. The system doesn't work the same for all members of our society, our justice system. And the incentives are bizarre, the incentives we have. The fact that there's no punishment when there is clear criminal activity sends the wrong message.
Amen.
I would add that the bipartisan nature of political contributions is amazing from the financial sector. So they manage to, on the one hand, complain about anti-business rhetoric, but at the same time, they're paying off both Democrats and Republicans to go easy on them.
So let me ask you a question here. Do you think that if the Justice Department could, in fact, make a case against Jamie Dimon, they would not do it?
I believe that's the case. That's right. Those are complex cases, and they are hard to make, and it's hard to find intent, but you can always come up with some charge.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but I wonder if incarceration has made an impact on some of the CEOs that were incarcerated, like Joe Naccio, who is leaving or has just left.
Has just left, so we'll find out if it had any effect.
And has already indicated that he's going to be suing to get some of his funds back. Yeah. So, putting people in jail may not be an appropriate punishment anyway.
I do not think they would, because there's a precedent that's been set with respect to how the federal government goes about the process of prosecuting wrongdoing at the corporate level. There are 13,000 lobbyists in Washington today who have been paid $3.3 billion to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, let me weigh in on this a little bit, because I think I kind of sort of agree with all of you. So I think in order to try to make that case, it would take years and years and years and years and cost everybody tons and tons and tons of money. On the other hand, you can get a quick $76 billion and get on to the next one, and you can put a check in your conviction rate column. So
well, I think, Dan, in response to that, this is an ethics panel, fundamentally. What does that say about the value of ethics in the process of business? Expediency seems to have taken a front seat, and the ethical issues surrounding whether or not a company can buy itself out of a problem has taken a back seat. Yeah.
But this has been the case, you remember, when the Environmental Protection Act was first enacted. The fines levied against companies for failure to comply with the law were considerably less than the amount of money it took to comply with the law. And so, once again, the reward system is not correctly set to produce the kind of behavior you really want to see happen.
I think the fines and the settlements have ramped up considerably, but I do think you're right that the pinch is not great enough. One of the primary ethical virtues is that of courage. And I don't think the Department of Justice has shown much courage in going after any of these people. They cower under the threat of having to go up against hugely paid corporate counsel. I'm reminded David Boies, who defended IBM for 13 years and always won against the Department of Justice, to the extent that they wound up hiring him to go after Microsoft. And now who is he representing but the CEO of AIG, Mr. Greenberg, in suing the government on the bailout issue. So the high-priced corporate attorneys, I think when you compare them to the talent in the SEC and the Department of Justice, the Department of Justice realizes if they go to court, they're probably going to lose.
I've heard that, but I won't say from whom. Thank you very much. We'll call it quits there. Well, that was a very interesting set of conversations. We covered a lot of territory, all the way from General Motors to the Veterans Administration to the National Football League to financial crimes and a bunch of items in between. It seems to me that there are some common themes that we can pull from those conversations. One is certainly the issue and the power of organizational culture as a determinant of the way people behave within those organizations. Another is the danger of using metrics without due concern for the unintended consequences of that metric management, especially when it's connected with incentive performance systems. A third issue is the risks that are involved in trying to manage a large, complicated bureaucracy, especially one that has very little ability to change the personnel and the structures within it. We learned a lot about the need for organizational courage, the willingness and ability of people within an organization to, as they say, speak truth to power and carry bad news upstairs. So there's a lot of lessons here, and these are all important in terms of bringing ethics to our own enterprises. We will continue to explore these issues and many more as we cover additional topics as we bring you more quarterly ethics reviews.